With the aid of the internet, it is easier than ever to encounter an extremely diverse array of perspectives. So for instance, I may click on a video and it can present to me a compelling case that such and such worldview is really, truly so. Actual, true. I'm like, okay, I'm convinced. And then I click on the next video and it debunks everything that was said in the last video and gives me a completely new understanding of the world. And it seems equally convincing. Okay, this must be it. And then I go to the next video and it does the very same thing. And I could go on and on like that concerning presumably thousands of distinct ways of looking at things. And obviously, if we were to go to the individual level, as many such ways as there are people. So what can be learned from that? And how can we possibly gain some clarity for the sake of our own understanding, sanity, and peace of mind? So one poignant lesson here that is suggested is that as opposed to reality being a certain set of propositions, it is something quite contrary to that. Meaning, we may think that reality or the world is synonymous with certain statements. For example, the world is a bunch of atoms, or the world is a globe, and on the globe there's continents and there's countries, and each country has politics and has citizens and such. Right? Or other statements that can be found in different kinds of disciplines, physics, sociology, political science, and so forth. Those are great for what they're worth, but if we think about how things really exist to us, it's a little bit different. Right? So let's say that in question is a kid. Right? We can think back to our own childhood, if at present I myself am not a child listening to a lecture. I can think back to when I was a child and I can see how my reality then was not a question of a certain such set of propositions. It wasn't as if to be, a 5-year-old means to believe statement A, B, C, D, E, and that's it. And that's what it means to be a 5-year-old. No, it was a whole, so to say, self-enclosed universe or existence, a state of maturity, a given point of view, a given outlook. Not, again, a question of simply chatter, not chatter. An analogy could be, for example, looking through a telescope or through binoculars or through a pair of shades, such as colors, everything. Right? There, concerning my visual field, it's a whole, and everything is colored by, let's say, the shades that I'm wearing. Say they're red, everything then is red. They're brown, everything is brown. They're fashioned so as to flip everything upside down, everything is upside down. Right? So there's no getting outside of that. And it's not simply a question of, again, saying this or that. So that could be one way to construe the matter. Each of us, or to speak more specifically, each living human anatomy, setting aside states of sleep, comatose states, indicates kind of an enclosed experience, such as I myself, whoever it is that I am, have. And that experience, 100% of it, is conditioned by, mediated by individual attributes. Again, everything that I see through a pair of red glasses is conditioned by, is mediated by the redness of the glasses. There's no getting outside of that while I'm wearing those glasses. Every moment of my experience, as for example, a 5-year-old with a given psychological, mental, physiological, psychophysical, what have we, profile, is conditioned by my 5-year-old hood. There's no getting outside of that. However, if I then mature to being 6, hopefully, and 7, and 8, and so forth, and I persist in my education and take advantage of the opportunities that I have for psychological, personal development and integration and such. My experience, all of it, A to Z, will change. I'll have a different pair of shades, right? Like going from the red pair of shades to a brown one, or maybe to a clearer one could be a better analogy. And here too, we see that it would not be merely a question of different statements coming out of my mouth, or believing, so to say, different things, or saying different things, or what have we. It would be kind of a whole person sort of thing. I would just experience all of reality differently. And that can keep going. The ball can keep rolling. Now I'm 20, right, and I've taken advantage, again, of all the opportunities that I personally have had. For some, they're less, for some, they're more. But I've tried to stay sincere, right, and tell the truth to myself and not deceive myself. And I've tried to confront my issues and confront my pride and confront my vanity and self-centeredness, that kind of thing. And now I live in a very different world than I did at 10, than I did at 5. Right? And supposing the aforementioned that I kind of did right by way of myself, I live in a much better world, as it happens, than I would have otherwise. Conversely, let's say that maybe I already had a poor deck of cards as it concerns, say, what's called the mind and psychology, and further I aggravated affairs by being deceitful, by pandering to my pride, to my self-centeredness. Now I'm 20, and what it's like to be me is some kind of semi-conscious medley of confusion. And I have constant random thoughts and impulses and appetites and desires. Some of them are bad, some of them are good. Who knows what? Right? So that's also an option. And I can't get outside of that. Temporarily, something may calm down, right? Maybe I have a mental issue, as it's called, and now it's at bay a little bit, but I'm still myself fundamentally. I can't really, even for a moment, even with drugs and alcohol, really get outside of myself in this way. Right? So that would be then another way to understand the question of perspectives. Perspectives are not just, again, to reiterate once more, are not just a question of different verbal beliefs, just a question of different statements, just saying, I believe that objective facts are like this, and you believe objective facts are like that. It's a question of my entire existence, of my whole self, of the shades through which I see everything altogether, to use that analogy. So we say then that there are as many such perspectives as there are individuals. Every single eligible body, meaning a living body, a human body, animals perhaps or presumably as well, but we can set that aside, indicates some such whole conditioned by individual attributes and elements, by individual minds, psyches, psychophysical attributes to make such splits. Right? So now either a person can simply exist as themselves in this way and go about his or her business, or a person can try to put into words this sort of individual outlook. And should he or she attempt to so do, that with varying extents of success may represent what was mentioned at the beginning, which is all of these different perspectives. Not only is there nothing wrong with having different perspectives, that's the only way that things can be. Each and every individual has a different such perspective. And if, again, a given individual tries to verbalize his or her unique perspective, his or her own unique individuality, there will be a diversity in what is said, needless to say. Now, with that said, we can add an additional caveat or helpful detail. We can ask, for example, when a member of a given worldview, right, would convince others that his or her worldview is the right one. We said at the beginning, right? We listen to one video, oh, that's right. Oh, the next video, no, that's right. That's right. That's right. Right? So when somebody wants to convince me that their worldview is correct, either they themselves or by way of a representative shall try to do what? He or she will try to convey him or herself as an adequate person, right? The number one priority then will be, if I'm smart, that is, to show or to pretend, at least, if it's not actually so, that I am mature, sane, emotionally grounded, right? That I care about others and I can listen to other people's point of view, that I'm not a fanatic, that I'm reasonable, rational, humane, not sadistic, that I'm not projecting all my inner evil on my enemies, that kind of thing. I'm going to try to convey myself basically as a decent person, or at least I'm going to try to pretend that I am a decent person, whether or not I actually am one. So what then does that tell us? That perhaps suggests to us that what is not so relative is the quality of human being that I am. Every single 5-year-old has his or her own individual perspective and worldview. But every single 5-year-old is 5 years old, for what that is worth. Obviously, some a little bit more mature, a little bit less mature, a little bit more developed, a little bit less, but all the same, essentially 5 years old. Again, plus minus whatever years the real age would be, the mental age, so to say. Right? So just so, every individual has his or her point of view. That is not to say that questions of maturity, questions of mental development, emotional development, and so forth are entirely relative. That is not to say that I can get away with, let's say, being a devious, self-centered little spot of selfishness and still be just as fine as somebody that works on their character, right? Works to become a better person. No, it's all relative. You know, you have your own point of view and I have my own point of view. No, those things are not so relative. Right? For example, it's presumably at least a little bit different to inhabit each and every body that there is to inhabit. That is not to say that pain is not pain. That is not to say that health is not health. No, pain is still pain and health is still health as it concerns the body. So just so as it concerns the self, maturity, humanity, proper individuality, those are all real things. They are certainly not all relative and not all based on whim. You know, again, you have yours and I have mine. Such is supported by the fact that each and every sensible advocate of a worldview tries to portray themselves as a good person, so to say, as a mature person. That's the only way you're going to listen to me. If I send as a representative for my agenda a raving loon who's going to rip off their clothing and start screaming and yelling that you have to listen to me, we all understand we're not going to listen to that person. Well, most of us presumably won't. Right? So that would indicate that the salient thing is who the person is. That's the main point. Who am I concerning my maturity, concerning my humanity, concerning my development, concerning my overcoming of my self-centeredness, of my selfishness? That's the meat and potatoes. So beyond all the perspectives, bearing in mind that they are necessary and it's great and phenomenal that everybody has their own point of view, that's the only way. But going further, again, the question would be, who are you? And most importantly, who am I? So hopefully that can be a bit clarifying. Thank you for listening.